Hey all, Bynx here, and welcome to Bynx Bants, the weekly show where we talk about everything Marvel Snap, starting, of course, with our featured segment, the best season pass card of every year. 2026 has started off with a bang with two insanely game-warping season pass cards. And it got me thinking about what season pass cards kind of did the same thing back in the day, and we're actually going into 5 years now of Marvel Snap. So I went from 2022 all the way up to this year, 2026. I picked the best season pass card as well as an honorable mention. And I tell you what, it was really, really hard to cut off some of these cards. I'll try and talk about the ones that didn't make the cut as we go through it. Let's talk about year one, and starting with the very first season pass card of all time, Wave. Wave was released as a 3 energy, 3 power with on reveal next turn, cards in both players' hands cost 4. This card was initially used mostly for the ramp side of things, to develop the early versions of ramp back when there was very, very few ways to push up the mana curve, because you could play this on 3 and then a 6-drop on turn 4. Then you could play a 5-drop and a 6-drop to essentially ramp. But this also had a lot of ways to really shut off what your opponent was trying to do, by making everything cost 4. You could play it on turn 5 and basically make it so you can only play 1 card. It was used in decks using things like She-Hulk and Death to get some discounts on a card, and the way it initially worked is making it 4 and then the discounts would apply. So you could play like a destroy deck, and you could play Wave on turn 5, and then you could play Death and another card on the final turn, while your opponent can only play 1 card. Really, really solid card top to bottom. It has been changed so many times. It has gotten like nerfed and adjusted a bunch of different times. It took a long time for the community to really figure out exactly the best way to play Wave. Very, very powerful, very awesome card, and the second best card of the first year. But the number one card from 2022 has to be the original iteration of Silver Surfer. It was a 3 energy, 0 power that had the on reveal give your other 3 cost cards plus 3 power. This is going to be a bit of a theme for the first 3 years, is that the most powerful cards started with giving plus 3 power and were eventually nerfed to plus 2 power. This was the final card of the first year of Marvel Snap, and man, this card was suffocating to go against. It just felt so tough to play against an opponent who is playing a bunch of 3 cards out and then just having them get boosted like crazy. You could do this with Wong, obviously, and with Odin like you can now, but having 50% more of a power boost was crazy and just so powerful. There were even negative Surfer lists because it was a 3-0. If you hit Mr. Negative on it, it would become a 0-3. You play a bunch of other 3 costs that were a little bit cheaper. So there was a ton of ways to play this early on. And man, this card was real nasty when it first released. It was nerfed pretty quickly in about a month and a half with another card that we'll talk about. But man, talk about a power level spike. This card came in at the end of 2022 and was just game warping with how strong it was. Really, really powerful card. And it was just such a strong way to close out that year. 2023 was the hardest year to only pick 2. 2023 was such a crazy year for season pass cards that a card that you were never going to expect wouldn't make this list did not make the list, because the honorable mention for 2023 I went with was Elsa Bloodstone. A lot of people either maybe weren't playing too much around the time that this was released and got into the game later. But if you were around for the first, I think, 3 weeks that this card was out, it might have only been 2 weeks. This is the fastest nerf ever to a card that happened. Elsa Bloodstone was originally a 2 energy, 2 power. It said if you play another card to fill a location, give it plus 3 power. A 2/2 that just gave you so much value. There were so many decks that would go around just using Elsa Bloodstone and using moving cards to just fill up a location. You'd hit things like Hope Summers and Angela, get it all buffed up, get giant hits, and then sometimes you just fill the whole board on the final turn. Not only would Elsa Bloodstone give you a bunch of power throughout the game, but it would still give you plus 9 power on the final turn if you were able to fill all 3 locations. This card was insane. And I think it was better than Loki when it released. I think that there's probably going to be a lot of people who disagree with me, because a lot of people say that like Loki is one of the strongest season pass cards of all time. But man, this card was just kind of on another level. This 2/2 version of this card was everywhere. There's also a lot of kind of stack over because Loki had come out right before this card, and this card was played in a lot of Loki decks, but this card could kind of just go in anything and was just this insanely oppressive archetype to go against. Crazy power level. It got changed super quickly to go down to like just +2, and then it gave +3 but only one lane, and then it got changed a bunch of different times. It doesn't see as much play anymore, but I really do think that the original iteration of 2/2 Elsa Bloodstone was just a tick over Loki. And I tell you what, neither of them were close to taking the #1 spot, because that, of course, had to go to Zabu, which came out the very first month of 2023. Was released as a 3 energy 2 power card with ongoing. Your 4 cost cards cost 2 less. This card was terrible. There's 2 times in Marvel Snap that I've like wanted to just never play the game again. One of the times was when this card was everywhere. It must have been a 50% meta share card. We've had one that's close really soon, but boy, oh boy, man! Anytime I think about Zabu, or you talk to anyone who was around when Zabu came out, this card was just so oppressive. Even if the Spider-Man Absman combo wasn't around, because back then Spider-Man was a 4/3 that didn't allow your opponent to play in a lane the next turn, and you could play both of those cards on turn 5 and essentially lock your opponent out of playing from all in one lane on the final turn, while being able to play a bunch of more 4 drops because they're all super cheap. This card was beyond broken. Got nerfed very quickly, along with Silver Surfer at the same time, because they came out back to back, even though they were in different years. It was December and January. But man, this is the strongest card that ever existed in Snap. It was a huge mistake to release it. And the fact that this card has now gotten nerfed so many times to go down to a 2 cost that makes the ongoings cost a little less. They tried to make it like a 1-turn thing as an on reveal at one point, and then going back to where it was at the 1/2, where it hits only the cards in the deck. And then they had to nerf that even further and bring it down to a 1/1. Just speaks to the obscene power level of this card on release. I really hope they never do anything like that again. Even though Shu Lao and Star-Lord are incredibly powerful season pass cards, they aren't close to being stronger than Zabu. It's crazy to say, because like right now it feels like last month it was so crazy trying to play against Shu Lao before it got nerfed, and this month it's so hard to play against Star-Lord over the first week before it gets changed or adjusted or nerfed, hopefully. But man, Zabu just ruined an entire month of Marvel Snap. Insanely oppressive card, and I hope we never see anything this strong ever again. Moving on to 2024. 2024 was an interesting one. I think that there's a lot of good things that I could have went into, so it was pretty hard to narrow it down. But in the honorable mention slot, we did get Surtur, the 3 energy 5 power card that says after you played a card with 10 plus power, this gains +3 power. So this used to just get an extra one, as we'll see many times again in this list. Going to 3 power just tends to be like a breaking point that makes cards so hard to deal with. And Surtur was an example of that. Going +3 power, you could basically play Surtur, and then you could play like a 4/10 to move it up to a 3/8. And you could play another big card to move it up to a 3/11, which works really well with Scar, because then you get a free Scar, because Scar used to cost 6 back then. And to be able to play multiple other big cards that will continue buffing up Surtur. This card was super repressive on release. It really just pushed, a lot of people would call it big dumb cards, of just playing a bunch of 4/10s in your deck and Surtur, and then you'd play things like Sauron to shut those ongoings off for the bad ones. Man, this card was a nasty card. Very strong. There was a lot of other things that were really close in 2024 to taking it off the spot of Surtur, but had to give it to this one. The +3 power really just pushed it over the top. And the best card from 2024 was the original iteration of Galacta, which was a 4/6 just like it is now, but again, instead of giving +2 power like it does, the first card you play at another location reveals with +3 power. This card was so dominant with things like Brood and just in any like Silver Surfer shell where you could multiply that buff and string it out. I mean, people were literally just running like Mr. Sinister in decks that had Galacta as just a really cheap way to be able to double that power that she was able to give. And man, she just felt like one of those cards where when it comes down on 4, it's so hard to fight and crawl back because she was able to just give you so much value turn after turn. She was super strong in Erishim because you'd be able to play her on 3 and then play 3 different iterations of getting +3 power onto your other cards. Super strong card top to bottom. It's really funny in the first 3 years. There's 4 of the 6 cards were nerfed down to giving only +2 power as opposed to +3. It's always kind of been this thing that people talk about within Marvel Snap, that cards that do +3 on like a trigger or something like that tend to be so good and they get brought down to +2. And those first 3 years really show why that was the case. Moving on to 2025. 2025 had a lot of good choices, and it felt very balanced, a lot of the different cards that were available in 2025. But for the honorable mention slot, we went with Iron Patriot, who had the on reveal at a random 4, 5, or 6 cost card to your hand. You're winning here after next turn. Give it -4 cost, which has since gotten changed to -3. Man, -4 cost was such a big difference because you'd be able to get free 4 drops. You'd be able to get 1 cost 5 drops and 2 cost 6 drops. And it was just so much easier to slot those power cards into curve with the extra discount. Man, this card was so tough to play around. Now that it's giving -3 cost, it's a very reasonable card. Still very strong, finding its way into plenty of different decks. But man, this card was so oppressive at -4 cost. It felt so terrible to have your opponent play this in an empty lane on turn 2, and you don't have a great follow-up to try and fight against it, because then the rest of the game you're just freaking out about what massive, disgusting card your opponent was able to play. I did put this card over Merlin. Merlin in this one, I was really considering and going back and forth if Merlin should get the honorable mention slot. But I think what really put it over the edge was how quickly Iron Patriot got moved to -3 cost and how long Merlin stayed in his original state and how much more play Iron Patriot was getting, man. Iron Patriot was another card that was hitting like in the high 30s to 40% play rate just in kind of everything. And a lot of matches came out to who had their Iron Patriot on turn 2. So I had to give the slight edge over to Iron Patriot in the honorable mention slot. And speaking of, let's talk about the absolute best card from 2025, the 2/2 Mr. Fantastic First Steps. Holy moly, this card was a menace, man. This thing was just such an absolute powerhouse if you get it on turn 2. Just pure value. Being a 3/4 now makes it so much harder to just like play out and not worry about it. Really, by the time you get to turn 3 in Marvel Snap, you want to be like developing something that's bigger for your game plan. But when it was a 2/2, like you really on turn 1 and turn 2, you kind of don't need to do too much to affect the board until you get a bit more energy and you see the rest of the locations. So what's better than just dropping down a 2/2 that will just make your hand stronger and less predictable the whole rest of the game? This card was such a beast at 2/2. I honestly think it was better than Surge was at 2/2. Just so strong. I'm really happy they changed this card pretty quickly because it was just kind of becoming like just run Surge and Mr. Fantastic First Steps and everything. And then they helped like lessen the load on those. Surge is still very powerful because it still is a card that you can play on too. But man, 2/2 Mr. Fantastic First. It was one of the few times where a card was so just universally powerful. I really think almost any deck in the game would have been improved by just hucking a Mr. Fantastic First Steps at 2/2. And it just makes everything that you do better the rest of the game. It makes it less predictable. It gives you value in ways that you wouldn't necessarily be able to think about. Just a monster of a card. I really was impressed by the power level of this card. And I hopefully with Surge and Mr. Fantastic releasing at the same time, they learned their lesson a little bit on just those pure value 2 drops that you can play out and not really have to worry about anything else and bring it back down. And this brings us to 2026. And to this, I want to bring this question to you, people who are watching, and answer down in the comments below. because I couldn't decide which was better. I had to go with a tie for 2026. I think that the original version of Shu Lao that was a 5'8" felt so strong coming in. And while I think like the ceiling of Shu Lao was a little bit lower than what Star-Lord Master of the Sun has been able to do, at least in the first week that I've been able to see, it's that Shulov felt so much harder to counter. Like there's a lot of really cool counterplay coming around now to Star-Lord Master of the Sun. Things like Supergiant are coming out a lot more. You know, Cosmo, Eliath are coming out a bit more to be able to kind of stunt what that deck is doing, and it's felt a bit more effective than counter decks to Shulao the Undying. Like the only real good counter card was Super Adaptoid, which is terrible because you try and like steal their Maverick and you steal their Scarlet Spider, and it just never felt too great to do. You just kind of like were at the mercy of Shu Lao going way over the top. Obviously, like nerfing down Shu Lao wasn't all of it. They also nerfed a lot of the other key players in that deck. But the 5'8 version of Shu Lao just felt so hard to actually find any reliable way to counter it, or any deck that like reliably fought against it outside of just going super combo and get the biggest power possible. But man, Star-Lord Master of the Sun, we're going to talk about it a little bit later as we talk about the cards this week. This card is just too strong. I really have not enjoyed the first week of trying to climb the season because this card exists and it's such a core part. This card hit 41% play rate when I was checking it today. 41% play rate. Just so many people are playing this card. It feels so oppressive to go up against. So strong. So I had to give it a tie. I mean, I think that both of these cards are like two of the absolute strongest cards on the list, outside of Zabu and probably the original version of Elsa. Maybe Mr. F First Steps. These feel way more oppressive for sure because they're like core parts of these decks. But man, what a start to 2026. I do think they put Shu Lao into a pretty good spot. I think that a big thing that I've actually been saying is that I know that Marvel Snap and their team, when they're like testing and like balance changing for cards, they're playing with multiple cards ahead of where we are. They're not like testing every new card that they're going into like in the exact meta that it will be released into. So I feel like a big reason why they were okay releasing Shu Lao as a 5'8 was because they were testing it alongside such a powerhouse like Star-Lord Master of the Sun. Yeah, I don't know. We'll talk about Star-Lord a little bit more, but 2026 is pretty crazy. You let me know down in the comments below. Do you think the original iteration of Shu Lao at 5'8 with what was available to it before those got nerfed, or do you think that the brand new Star-Lord Master of the Sun was the better card so far in 2026? Would love to hear it. Moving on today, we have a couple of new cards to look at, and we're also going to be talking about the cards that came out last week with the start of the season. We're going to start with a brand new card that is coming out, Drax, Avatar of Life. Man, this card is crazy strong. It's very strong. That is a 3 energy, 4 power with end of turn plus 3 power if your opponent played a card with greater power this turn. Move to that card if you'd be winning its location. I really think if you play this out on turn 3, you are almost always getting a 3/10 worth of value out of it. It's very rare that your opponent's never going to play a card bigger than 7 across the game, and they're usually going to be playing a card that's bigger than 4 the turn that you play Drax, and it's going to move immediately. So this is just another really strong mid-range card, can go into a lot of different decks. This is going to be, I think, one of those cards that's just going to fight for being like the just best pure stats for cost value in its slot. Like the 3-drop slot right now, you're really looking at like Cass, which sees a little bit less play now. Like speed is usually pretty good from a pure power standpoint. In the 3-drop slot, there's not too many cards that can really compete with Drax on power. So I think that this card is going to be a meta shakeup style card. I think that it's going to be very strong. One thing that's interesting about its ability with when it moves, if you'd be winning the location, the check that it does to do that is going to be random. So it's not going to matter in like play order. So for instance, let's play Drax on turn 4 and your opponent plays 2 5-power cards. Going to randomly pick one of those to see if it'd be winning that location to move. I'm not sure if it'll check both, like check one first and then check the other. Kind of interesting to see what's going to happen, but we'll see that as the gameplay comes on. But boy, oh boy, I do not think you can skip this card. I think that if you skip Drax, you're going to be really, really kicking yourself. I wouldn't be surprised to see this card get nerfed. We were talking about the +2, +3 power thing. I could definitely see this card going to +2 power. So we'll see. But man, going to be a really, really strong card, and maybe going to be something that can start to fight against this power level of Star-Lord. Again, maybe when they were working with Star-Lord and they felt like it would be okay, they're looking at more of the cards in the season at the same time. Maybe some cards that we don't even know the exact whereabouts of where they're going to be. So it's really, really interesting, but I think that Drax is definitely a go-get card. It's just going to be a pure value card, going to find its way into a lot of decks, and you're definitely going to want it in your collection. Next up, we have Major Victory. This is going to be the reward for playing the Grand Arena. It is a 3 energy 4 power with the ability on reveal, add 2 members of the Guardian crew to your hand. So the Guardian crew are the original 6 Guardians of the Galaxy that were released in the base version of the game. So you have Rocket Raccoon, Star-Lord, Groot, Drax, and Gamora. Then you also have Mantis, which I kind of wish they didn't include because Mantis is probably a decent bit worse to get. I guess getting a random Mantis is generally better than getting, something else. And also maybe, if you're playing this in like a Devil Dinosaur style deck or maybe like a Collector, Victoria Hand style deck, maybe Mantis is pretty good because you want to be copying more cards. But I don't know. I'm interested in this card. I definitely want to try and play it. The problem with being like a 3/4 that just provides you value is that you have to compete with a lot of things like Prowler. Like, is this card going to be better than Prowler? Is getting just Guardians of the Galaxy that, you can fight for certain lanes going to be better than, just having some 1 or 0 cost spells that always give you good value? Not exactly sure. Don't know the exact place for this, but it's a very fun card, and getting a bunch of Guardians into your hand to be able to play cards that you usually wouldn't want to put in your deck, but maybe you want to put this like, little package that you can open during the game to get some more Guardians and things like that. Maybe it works in just a Victoria Hand style deck. I'm not exactly sure, but it's going to be a really, really fun one for sure, and you're going to be able to get your hands on it by playing the Grand Arena. Let's talk about this first week of the Guardians Greatest Hits Volume 2, because we got to talk about Star-Lord, Master of the Sun, the 4 energy 5 power card. With on reveal next turn, you get +1 energy for each turn you've ended with unspent energy. This gains that much power. This card's everywhere. If you've been playing ladder at all so far this month, you have probably seen so much of this card. You're sick of it. If you're a free-to-play player, you're probably very upset that this card is so powerful because you're not able to get access to it because it's part of the season pass. And I don't know, I'm kind of surprised at how strong this was right after Shu Lao was so strong. Like I said, it got up to a 41% meta share when I was looking earlier today. Just an absolute powerhouse of a card, completely meta warping. Basically, right now, you either have to play Star-Lord or play something that can beat it, and there's a very limited group of things that can beat it. So I've tried my best to do a few other things. I've liked like some Iron Man style decks to be able to try and fight off against this, but really seems like things like Supergiant are the best things to pull it back. The reason I wasn't as high on Star-Lord, and I think a lot of people weren't as crazy high on Star-Lord as he's obviously doing right now going into the season, is I just really didn't even think about how crazy it would be to copy his ability so many times. So now, you're playing Star-Lord and then you're playing Absman. Or hilariously, if you watched last week's Bynx Bants, I was like, why would you ever play Silver Surfer First Steps? I tell you what, Silver Surfer First Steps is insane with this card. You play it out. If you had floated turns 1 through 3, you play it on turn 4. You then get +3 energy on turn 5. So you have 8 total energy on turn 5. Then you could play some combination of Absman, Grandmaster. You can play Zola on it. You can play Odin on it. You can play Silver Surfer First Steps beneath it. You just have so many ways to copy this and just get massive, massive amounts of power. Crazy, crazy strong card. If you don't have it already, definitely get your hands on it if you're interested in getting the season pass, because the whole meta is revolving around this card right now, and it's just a little bit too strong. I'm really, really hoping that we see a nerf to it the next time an OTA comes around. I actually don't know if there's one this week or next week. If it's next week, there's a chance this could get hit. If it's this week, it definitely will not. They're very, very rare with doing 2-week nerfs, as we saw with Shu Lao. which was just about as strong as it and maybe not as easy to counter. But man, I'm not huge on Star-Lord. If you are struggling and being upset on ladder right now and you want to feel better, go and watch some of my streams from the end of last week. I had some of the most egregious just spans of not being able to draw my cards and getting crushed by this card over and over and over again. So I'm with you. I'm having a really hard time too. You think that we're falling into a weird spot where, over the last couple of months, the balance of the game has felt kind of weird and off because of these two cards coming in and really, really shaking things up. So hopefully we can get a bit of normalization going soon where things start to feel okay and it feels like you can play more different cards and like feel good about it. But for right now, we're kind of in Star-Lord's meta and you have to beat it or play it. It's your choice, I suppose. Moving on to Moondragon. I love this card. I think this card is absolutely incredible, and it's super overshadowed currently by this card, but once this card gets a nerf, really think that I'm going to come back around and play a lot more Moondragon. The 2 energy, 2 power card says end of turn plus 2 power if you played 1 card this turn and spent all your energy. Essentially, they're just going to slam down Moondragon and then hopefully play a really, really tight curve and get as much power as possible. It can work really great with things like Doom 2099. It fits well into that deck, especially being an end of turn. Doom 2099 is an end of turn, so there's a lot of end of turn cards in that setup that you can move on to. I've liked it in like a Blink curve style deck where you're trying to play just on curve every single turn. So you play Moondragon on 2 and then, just some powerful 3-drop on turn 3. On turn 4, you can play something like Jubilee, and then you can blink the Jubilee on 5, and then you finish off with a big powerful card. I've liked like a hybrid like ramp style deck I've had before with Moondragon and Chamber. So you have a powerful card to play on one of those 2 turns. And then, you can ramp up, and if you get an extra energy, there's Foom now. So you can still play like ramp up on 3, play a 5-drop on 4, 6-drop on 5, and finish off with Foom on 7 and keep Moondragon growing like crazy. But if you play this on turn 2 and you're able to do it every single turn, this card gets up to a 212. Super, super powerful. If you haven't really messed around with this card because it doesn't play well into those Star-Lord, Master of the Sun decks that are around, keep your eye on this card, and once some things change up in the meta, think about it and try and go back to it, because like, even if you just play this on turn 2, it's a 2-4, and you activate it like 2 times, you're still getting a 2-8 out of it. So as long as you play a few cards on curve, it doesn't even have to be as all in as I've been doing. I really think you can get a lot of good value out of this card, and I think that it's super, super underrated right now. So keep your eye on Moondragon as things get shaken up. Talk about a card that is not underrated. Magus, or as I've been calling him, Magnus, because I read it as Magnus the first time, and you probably watched the last thing, and I think I called it Magnus every single time. And I'm going to continue calling it Magnus, so you're just going to have to deal with that. Magnus is a 3 energy 5 power card. It says activate, copy the text of a character in your deck with cost equal to your unspent energy without using it on reveal. This card is just, I think, kind of bad. It's just the fact that you can't copy an activate ability or an on reveal. An activate doesn't work because you've already used the activate on Magnus, and then it won't be able to activate again to use the activate ability. You could do it with like Jocasta or something like that. But then you can't use the on reveal either unless you use like something like Grandmaster or something like that. So really you're like paying this cost of a 3-5 to play it, and then you still have to essentially pay the cost of whatever you're getting, even though it's unspent energy. Obviously, there's ways that you can use it with things like She-Hulk. The best way that I've theorized to use this, and I really feel like it is a She-Hulk style deck where you want to float 5, like She-Hulk Warlock style deck where you want to float 5. Then you have multiple very powerful 5 costs like ongoing, end of turn, or triggered effects. So like Iron Man, Claw, or like Thing for Steps is something you could think about. And then you basically can use this, and then if you want to float on turn 5 already for things like Sunspot or things like She-Hulk, then you're also able to then get a very powerful on reveal, make this like an Iron Man. It's pretty good. I don't know how good that is, but you can't even really do that right now, because if you're going to be doing that, why wouldn't you just be playing Star-Lord, Master of the Sun instead and not even worrying about this card? So this is another card that Might start to see a bit of an uptick in play if they chop down Star-Lord Master of the Sun. But for right now, it's seeing very little play. It's getting very little results. I don't like where the card's at. I don't like this ability. I just don't even. I think they should let it use on reveals. I don't know. Maybe there's some game breaking thing that they're trying to avoid with it. But like the fact that it's so restrictive and so expensive, and you have to like plan out your turn perfectly. There's just too many things that they're fighting against this card to make it, in my opinion, something that you want to be playing in just about any deck. So keep an eye on Magnus. Maybe after again a meta shakeup, I have much more hope in Moondragon being something that'll be interesting and powerful once that happens. I'm still not sure about Magnus. I think they're gonna have to make some changes to it or something like that. Not exactly sure, but don't be worried if you don't have this card in your collection. It's not very strong. And then the last thing we have is just a little bit of news and updates. We have a Grand Arena that's going to be starting on February 12th and run through the 19th. One thing I do know is that you were able to get major victory through it, and the rest, no idea. I don't think that anyone really knows. I actually spent a lot of time before this, like going through and trying to figure out, is there more information that I'm missing on this? The only thing that they really released in the dev video is that Major Victory is going to be there. Maybe there's some data mine things that can point to what it's going to be, but you're just going to have to show up and find out. Hopefully that is a good, hopefully it's a good setup that makes it so that you can earn Major Victory without having to grind too terribly much. I think Grand Arena is a really interesting setup. We don't even know if it's going to be like the last Grand Arena was, where you could only play like the normal decks, or if it's going to be like original Grand Arena where there's like two different things you can do. Alex Kocha had a great suggestion for this, and I don't know if he got it from someone or somewhere. We talked about it on a podcast before, to make Grand Arena either like start as like limited decks, and you can only use specific decks, and halfway through unlock it and open things up. I think that's something that I hope that they go for, but no real inclination as of yet what we're going to do. But make sure you log into Grand Arena to grab your Major Victory. And that's going to do it for Bynx Bants February 9th, 2026. Hope that you enjoyed this. Let me know down below specifically if you think that I'm stupid and that Loki was better than the original Elsa Bloodstone, which would be fine. But in 2026, what do you think is the better Season Pass card? Is it Star-Lord Master of the Sun, or is it Shu Lao the Undying? I'd love to hear for you. And oh, I can hear it. Oh, it's coming. It's the song. See you in the next one. Bynx, Bynx, Bynx.